to the next point. We should ensure whatever we say is clear.
That means work is being done. We can see that it is in opposite direction. It is against.
Good day, students. You are welcome to another interesting edition of the e-learning. I am Mariam Ahmed Gidado, your biology teacher. Biology is a subject that is usually taught in senior secondary school. So those of you that have finished the junior secondary school classes, you are about to enter the senior secondary school. You are going to meet a subject called biology. When you were in the junior secondary school, you were taught basic science. So in that basic science, biology is being carved out. So for those of you that are going to study science, you are going to meet biology. Those of you that are going to be in the art class are also going to meet biology. So biology is more of a general subject to all of you. So when you enter the class of biology, the first topic you are supposed to meet is what we are going to discuss today. Before you enter into this subject biology, let us look at what is science, because we know biology is a part of science. So what is science? So science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. This definition is not by me, but is by Google Dictionary. This is how science is being defined by Google Dictionary. There is another definition by PDF 2018. Science is a systematic knowledge based on facts, observations, and experimentation. This is another definition. So in a simpler word, we can define science as the systematic process of making inquiry about living and non-living things in our environment. My student, what we mean by science is seeking for knowledge. Seeking for knowledge, but in a particular way. Not just looking for knowledge anyhow, but a systematic process of seeking for knowledge about what is happening in your environment, both the natural and the artificial that are around your environment. When you are always eager to seek for this knowledge, this is a starting point of being a scientist. But when you just sit and look at things happening without even making an inquiry or without even bothering to know what is happening in my environment, maybe if you see the sun today is very bright, tomorrow is not bright, or you see the rain is falling, you are not even bothered to know why rain is falling, why sun is this and that. So you are not going to be a scientist. But when you sit in the class, you always want to know why things are happening. Then you have started becoming a scientist. Okay, human beings have always been curious to know more about existence of things around them. That brings about the study of science. When human beings are always wanting to know, when we say curious, curiosity means wanting to know or wanting to learn about something. That is what we mean by curiosity. So a scientist is always curious. When you are always curious in knowing what is around your environment, you are becoming a scientist. Science knowledge allows us to develop new technologies, solve practical problems, make information decisions both individually and collectively. That is, with science, we have solved so many problems of our society. If not because of the study of science, so many things wouldn't have been the way they are now. So the application of scientific knowledge helps to satisfy many basic human needs and improve living standards. So who is a scientist? A scientist is someone who systematically gathers and uses research and evidence, making a hypothesis and testing it to gain and share understanding and bring about change. Whether the change in medicine, improvements in the agriculture or in the environment, or creating more efficient fuels. A scientist is that person that seeks for knowledge. But seeking for knowledge, you have to look for evidence. Not just seeking for knowledge like that. You don't seek for knowledge and start spreading it like that. There are ways, there are systems that you are supposed to follow. So when you gather information, you gather evidence. When you gather the evidence, you have to formulate hypothesis. When you formulate hypothesis, you test the hypothesis. Then at the end of it, the result you are able to get, that is what you are going to share with other people. And a scientist doesn't hide knowledge. If you want to be a scientist, don't hide your knowledge. Anything you are able to get, share it with somebody, because what you are not able to prove, another person can prove it. So scientists work in a group. Not a single scientist will make a research from the beginning to the end of research, saying, I am the person that is able to invent this. No, you cannot be a scientist alone. So many people have to work with you. So if you want to be a scientist, try to share knowledge with your colleagues. When you are able to make a finding, try to share the finding with somebody. This is what I'm able to do. So that person might be gifted enough to find something that you have not been able to get. So scientists always share their knowledge. And it is because of the knowledge they are sharing now, we have improvement in our medical ways, we have improvement in agriculture, we have improvement in environment, and a lot of things. If not because of their sharing the knowledge, maybe so many things wouldn't have been in place by now. Then let's look at what are the usefulness of science in our environment. That is, what is the importance of the science we are talking about. We have seen the definition of science. We have seen who is a scientist. So what do you think is the importance, or what do you think are the uses of science to us as human beings? One, in the field of medicine, that is in the medical aspect. Science helps man greatly in the manufacture of vaccines and drugs that are used today to cure various diseases of man. Medicine is the science and practice of establishing diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, and prevention of diseases. My student, what I mean here, if you can remember, or if you can recall back, some of us, our parents or our grandparents, whenever they are sick, they go to the bush, get leaves, get herbs, get so many things in the bush to come and care themselves. But that was then. So many of you were not born then. But now, with advent with science in medicine, there are many drugs that are being manufactured, which if you are sick, you go to the hospital first. When you go to the hospital, they run a test. That testing, that is science, because they have to take maybe your blood sample, or they take your urine, or they take your saliva, they now take it to the lab. The laboratory scientists will have to test it and diagnose what is even happening to you before treatment. And when the result is out, you now see the doctor. The doctor will now prescribe a drug for you, which you are going to use at least to regain back your health. But in those days, that was not the case. When you are sick, your grandfather will not even ask you what is wrong. When you just say, I have headache, I'm vomiting, you just go and get herbs. Come and boil it, no quantity, and start giving you. But that is not the case now because of improvement in science. With science now, it is very possible to even see unborn baby in the woman's womb, to even see the sex of the baby. That was not the case before. If a woman is pregnant before, you just have to wait for the delivery day before you see whether a boy or a girl. With even science now, it is even possible to operate or to have surgery on unborn baby in the mother's womb, but a baby can be operated. This is the importance of science. Scientists were researching and researching, so they are able to develop so many gadgets, so many equipment, so many facilities to look at all those things. This is improvement in science or in medicine due to research in sciences. So my students, try to be scientists and try to research well so that we even proceed or we even elevate from where we are now. That is in the medicine. Then we look at the field of agriculture. That is the issue. The main role of science in agriculture has been to help generate novelties that allow us to produce more with less land and less effort. In the agric, that is in the farming and rearing of animals. That is what you mean by agric. So in agric now, there are many equipment or many facilities that you can use to improve your farming capability. Before now, people have to, if you have a plot of land, you have to employ at least 50 or even 100 to go and cultivate your land. But with science now, there are tractors, there are many machines that within the shortest period, your farm will be cultivated, and there are many improved seeds that now if you get them and plant them, you will get more yield than before. And there is what we call now crossbreeding. We have plants that we were not having in Nigeria before, but because of improvement in science, the seeds have been crossbred, and now you can plant them successfully in Nigeria. The same thing with animals. Now we have agric chickens. Before now, if you have a chicken, you have to wait for at least 6 months, even before the chicken will start laying eggs. But now, if you have chickens, you just keep them for 2-3 weeks or 4 weeks, they are ready for consumption. Some 6 weeks, they are ready for laying eggs. These are improvement in science in the agriculture. Again, we have fish. Before now, our parents or grandparents used to go to the river to fish. They swim, as they swim, they now fish. But now you can even keep your fish at home in pond. You give them drugs, you give them injections that in 6 months or in 3 months, the female fish will give you a lot of fish in the pond, and you can keep them there. Within the shortest period, you sell them. This is improvement in agriculture. Then we now look at improvement in transport. With science, we know that before now, our parents and grandparents used to trek from one village to another. Some of them that are rich will have horse, or they have donkeys, or they have camels. That is if you are rich to have those animals. But if you don't have them, you have to trek long kilometers to visit maybe your parent or to visit your friends. But with research in science, is my student, now we have aeroplanes that you can even travel from Nigeria to China, very far from Nigeria. But in those days, you hardly see a person that will say, I have visited China, because you cannot visit because it's very far, and there are rivers that maybe you have to cross, and you don't have the ability to cross those rivers, so you cannot visit some countries. But with advent of science, or with science around us, now you can visit so many countries. In short, the world is now a global village where you can visit so many places within the shortest period. We have trains, we have cars, we have rockets. In short, we have facilities that can even travel to the moon. We have been hearing scientists visiting the moon. They are now even trying to see if people can settle in the moon. This is all scientific knowledge. Without scientific knowledge, nobody will think of going to the moon, not to talk of settling and living inside the moon. So in the area of transport, science has improved transport greatly through the cars, the trains, the ships, and the rest. That is in the area of transportation. Let's now look at communication and technology. So with the aid of scientific knowledge, man is able to develop facilities such as television, radios, mobile phones, computers, which help him to enhance his activities on Earth. Before now, information, if a particular information is to be passed to people in the village, some people used to beat drums. When you hear them beating drums, then there is a particular information that is going to be passed, maybe from the village head or so. But now we have radios, we have televisions that you sit at the comfort of your room on your bed, listening to what is happening in even China, India, and other countries that you have not been there. You even see what is happening there, you listen to what is happening there. That is research in science that is able to bring all these things to us. Before now, our parents don't even know what is happening in India. They don't know what is happening in China, but they just happen to maybe know what is happening around their environment. So that is communication. And now we have computers that you can store your informations, and anytime you want them, you can get them. But now, before now, you use papers. And if there is any outbreak of fire, your papers can be burnt. But now, since you have computers, you can store your information. And anytime you want to get your information back, you have your computer. You have mobile phones, which before if you want to get somebody, you can use the phone, dial some numbers, you get person, and you talk to the person. That was not the case before. Our parents, if you want to get somebody, you have to travel, trek to go and get that person before you can communicate. But now with phones, you can communicate with so many people around the world. This is improvement in science. Science has really helped in the area of communication and communication technology. Then we have construction and engineering. That is, we have, because of science, due to knowledge of science acquired, man is able to design and build the following: railways, airports, just like I said in the transport section. You have aeroplanes. But aeroplanes don't land anywhere. They have their specific place where they are being parked, where the people can enter and they fly. That is the airport. So it is through the construction companies that are able to make airports. Railways, train cannot travel on roads. It's a special road for the train. This is the advent of science, or this is the importance of science that is able to bring out railways, road, bridges, overhead, ships that travel on sea water. This is the importance of also science. Without science, these ships, trains cannot travel on railways, aeroplanes cannot land on airports without science. But with studies of science, many scientists have been working for long, so we are able to get airports where our aeroplanes will land. We are able to get railways where our trains can move on, because trains cannot move on roads. Then we have the road also. We have ships that can travel on sea water to go to other countries. This is the work of construction and engineering. Without knowledge of construction and other engineering, these facilities cannot be built. And this is the importance of science in construction and engineering. There are many other things that have not been mentioned here. Manufacturing industries. Before now, when our grandparents cultivate cotton, you now get the cotton, process it into thread. It takes them a very long time to even process it. It is our grandparent, the women, will now use the cotton to make thread. It is the thread now that will be collected to go and make clothing. So it used to be very hectic. But now we have processing industries, manufacturing industries that can get these raw materials, cotton, process them into thread, and before you know it, we have so many clothes around us with the use of cotton. The same thing like fruits. Before now, you just have to buy fruit and eat them the way they are. But now, if you cannot eat fruit the way they are, there are many companies that have processed fruit into juice that you can consume. This is manufacturing industry, and this is the importance of science. Even corn that now we get in the farm, you come and roast it or boil it and eat. We have one that is inside the can, that if you don't want to eat the roasted one or the boiled one, you can get the one in the can and eat. This is how manufacturing industries have turned so many raw materials to finished good for our own consumption, and it has made life very easy for us. So these are some of the importance of science, to mention but a few. I have not exhausted, but because of time factor, we are going to leave it here. We now look at scientific methods. What we mean by a scientific method is, what are those techniques that a scientist use in finding the knowledge? Since we said science is seeking for knowledge. And a scientist is that person that seeks the knowledge of science. So what are those methods or what are those techniques that scientists use in gathering the knowledge? Since we said it is not a knowledge that is just being gained like that. No, it is systematic. So what are the methods? Then the scientific methods are observations, a hypothesis, experimentation, results, analysis, and conclusion. That is, whenever a scientist is going to research on anything, the scientist has to follow these steps. These steps are observations. That is the first step. Anything you want to research on, the first step is supposed to be observation. Then the next is supposed to be hypothesis. Then after hypothesis, there is experimentation, there is a result or analysis, that is analysis of result. Then we have conclusion. That is the starting point of scientific method is observation, which involves the use of senses. When you are observing something, you have to use your 5 senses. You look at it, you feel it, you smell it, this is observation. So scientists, if a scientist wants to research about anything, the scientists start with observation, using the 5 senses. Look at it, what is the process? If possible, smell it. What is the smell of that thing? If possible, touch it. If it is possible, taste it. You are now using your 5 senses to observe. When you observe, you classify, you identify. From there, you form hypothesis. When you form hypothesis, you now go into experimentation. Experimentation means testing. You have to go into the laboratory and test, because you cannot just make conclusion on anything without testing. So the testing of that particular thing you are studying is what we call experimentation. When you go to experimentation, then you have experiment, then you gather the data. When you gather the data, you now analyze the data. That is what we call analysis of the result. So when you analyze the data, you now come into conclusion. So whatsoever a scientist concludes, it is now called a theory. That is, when you research, after observing, after hypothesis, after experimentation, result and analysis, you now come into conclusion. The conclusion is called the theory. But a theory has, when a theory has been tested extensively, it becomes a law. What I'm saying here is when a scientist makes all this research, at the end of it, the end product or the conclusion is called a theory. But a theory will be tested with other scientists. As I said, if you are a scientist or you want to be a scientist, you have to share knowledge. So whenever you are doing the work, you share knowledge with other scientists. So when you have the theory, if there are 3 scientists working, this one has the same theory with you, this one has the same theory with you, this one. If the theory is tested, so many scientists have tested the theory, now the theory becomes the law. So as you are going into the study of science, you will be coming across law of this, scientific cell theory, law of thermodynamics, you come across it. So when you come across it, you know that it is not only one person that did the study and to the end of it. Many of them shared the knowledge. So at the end of it, they are now able to arrive what we call a law. Anything that becomes a law, it has been tested and proven by so many scientists. That is what we call a law. So in the next class, because of time factor, we are not going to continue from here. But I will leave assignment with you people before we meet in the next class. And the assignment is, what is science? That is, I want you people to define science. Then B part, list 5 usefulness of science. I have spoken about usefulness of science. So list at least 5 of them and explain. Then the C part, list the stages involved in scientific methods. That is, what are the stages a scientist is supposed to follow when finding any particular knowledge in science. I will repeat. Question 1A, what is science? Question 1B, list 5 usefulness of science. Then question 1C is list the stages involved in scientific methods. So I will be expecting your assignments, comments, and other observation through my number 070 3158 6058. I am your biology teacher, Mariam Ahmed Gidado. I will say my number again, 070 3158 6058. So stay safe, keep learning. Good day.